Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Anna Birdsall, your host for Software AG's Web Methods Innovation Series. Web Methods has been a leading force in technology innovation for almost 2 decades, including driving major advances in API management, integration, and B2B integration. And today we are excited to talk about how best to protect your business against the growing number of cybersecurity threats. And in just a moment, we'll be getting top expertise and guidance on this topic from Software AG's Brenton House. But before I turn it over to Brenton, I'm pleased to share that Web Methods has again been ranked a leader in the latest Forrester Wave for Enterprise iPaaS and in the API Management Solutions Wave, validating our best-in-class solutions and strong presence in the market. For those of you who may not be as familiar with Software AG, we have been around for more than 50 years and have consistently been recognized as a customer-centric leader in many innovative and digital technology categories, both on-premises and in the cloud. Plus, we can cite over 50% of the Fortune 100 and 70% of the Global 1000 as customers. And as we move through today's webinar, we invite you to place any questions you have in the questions box. This is located on the left side of the webcast dashboard you are viewing. Brenton will address your questions at the end of today's program. However, if we are not able to answer your question in the allotted time, we will get in touch with you after the program as soon as possible. And please also note that this webinar is being recorded and will be made available to you by email within 24 hours. And now it's my pleasure to turn it over to today's presenter. Please welcome Brenton House, Senior Digital Strategist at Software AG. Over to you, Brenton.
Hello, everyone. I am Brenton House, and I equip organizations to be successful in creating secure API strategies. Make sure your seatbelts are securely fastened as your API security space exploration is about to begin. I am an ex-hacker, architect, consultant, strategist, and now Vice President of Digital Evangelism at Software AG. I use visual storytelling to leverage my 25 plus years of experience in the world of APIs to create secure strategies for enterprises on their API and digital transformation journeys. But I am here today to make sure that you are prepared for the API apocalypse. That's right. I'm going to give you the 5 keys that you need to know to survive and thrive in this API economy. But before we go there, let's take a look at what's going on right now. According to a recent report by Domo, in the next 60 seconds, people will watch 694,000 hours of videos on YouTube. Twitter users will post 575,000 tweets. Slack users will send 148,000 messages. Google will conduct 5.7 million searches and 12 million people will send an iMessage. Users will send 2 million Snapchats and people will watch 167 million videos on TikTok. The list goes on, but there's one thing in common. All of these services and more are powered by APIs. This API economy that we live in has found its way into every organization, into people's homes, into smartphones, smart cars, smart watches, smart refrigerators, and smart thermostats. But it's more than that. It's also about revolutionizing how enterprises are organizing their products, their teams, their resources, and their budgets. APIs are a gateway to your product and are what enable your business to engage with consumers in the digital world. In order to compete in this very fast-moving API market, companies are now adopting API-first strategies and allocating budget and resources to allow them to succeed and win. APIs have been around for a long time. When APIs first started appearing, it was great. Being able to access data in a structured way without having to go through all kinds of adapters or connectors to get to your database was really cool. I created my first API back in the 90s using Cold Fusion and JavaScript, and it was consumed by Flash controls on web pages. It was great. It was an easy way to get the data you wanted from the database over HTTP. However, we didn't put much, if any, thought into security for our APIs back then. I mean, who even knew it was there, right? Welcome to the future. Okay, so maybe we aren't living in the future that we all hope for, but as far as APIs go, things have come a long way since the beginning. APIs are everywhere and their numbers are growing exponentially. You may be thinking that your API program is too small, or that your data is really not that valuable and no one would want to hack into your API to get to it. You are not fine. If your API ecosystem is not secure, you could lose everything. As long as there have been APIs, there have been hackers who are searching for vulnerabilities in those APIs. The very thing that makes APIs great can also make them an easy target for attacks. They have predictable and documented methods and standards for usage. API security and cybersecurity is of critical importance for every organization, especially now. We now know that APIs are an essential part of almost every organization. But we also know that APIs are a highly desired and attractive target for hackers and cyber attacks. Secure your APIs. Nobody wants to be in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. Earlier, Gartner had predicted that by 2022, API abuses will move from infrequent to the most frequent attack vector. The growth in not only the number of APIs, but the exponential increase in API usage has made this prediction all the more impactful on organizations in every vertical. According to the latest Salt Labs report, API traffic has increased by 141%, and API attacks increased by 348% just from December 2020 to June of 2021. Now for some good news. The number of resources available to assist organizations in understanding and implementing a proper API security strategy and architecture has also grown. Let's start with one valuable resource you may have already heard of. If you've done any research on API security and cybersecurity, there's a good chance you've already been introduced to OWASP, but I'd like to define it for you just in case. OWASP, or the Open Web Application Security Project, is an international nonprofit organization that is dedicated to web application security. What they're probably most well known for is their reoccurring top 10 list of web vulnerabilities. But in addition to their list of web vulnerabilities, they also came out with a top 10 list for API security. These lists are an important resource to factor in when creating an API security strategy for your organization. Let's jump over to the studio and take a quick look at them. This list of 10 security vulnerabilities for APIs is going to play a critical role in the story going forward. So pay attention. I'm about to give you the 5 things that you need to do to survive this API apocalypse. So let's start with number 1. At number 1, we have know your data. You need to know what data you have and what data you are providing access to. What data do your customers and applications need compared to what data you are actually allowing access to right now? You might have data like user info, product info, partner info, commerce transactions, billing. It all depends on what your product is and who your target audience is. Only you know your system and can evaluate the types of data and classifications that you need to provide access to in your APIs. Do you ever find yourself in those situations where you or someone else gets nervous and starts talking and they just can't stop, even though it's obvious they really want to stop? Sometimes this is called word vomit. Well, there's an API vulnerability called excessive data exposure that I like to refer to as API word vomit. Say you call an API to get a user or some other entity. You get back the info you're looking for and sometimes a whole lot more. Sometimes information like usernames, permissions, IDs, and other bits can be used to piece together a puzzle and provide a valuable key that can be used in unlocking things that you don't want unlocked. Often an API will publish more data than is displayed through the UI client. It's important to sanitize and filter the data that is exposed through the API, as this can be viewed using other methods. Take advantage of your API gateway's ability to apply data transformation and data masking features to your APIs. Attackers are going to look at API payloads for information that could be used for an attack. Pay special attention if you're dealing with any kind of PII data or if you are subject to any kind of government regulations or compliance. You might be sending data that could put you or your organization in jeopardy. You also want to check things like logs and errors. Are your logs leaking information that they shouldn't be? Are your logs secure? Are you including too much information in your logs? Is there information in your logs that could be used to launch an attack on your APIs? At number 2, we have Know Your APIs. There is also improper assets management that you need to be concerned about. You can't protect what you don't know you have. You need a complete inventory of all your APIs. Identify all APIs, whether they're in the cloud, on-premise, in a data center, or service mesh. Find all known and unknown APIs. So what different types of APIs are there? When evaluating the security of your APIs, it's important to remember that there are several types of APIs that you might be using. Some of these you're probably very well familiar with, and you can see them in the list right here. You have public APIs, external APIs, open APIs, internal APIs, partner APIs, third-party APIs, composite APIs, and beta testing or staging APIs. Some of the other types of APIs that you might not be as familiar with include shadow APIs. Those internal or public APIs that you created and use but are trying to keep off the radar. Then you have zombie APIs. And those are APIs that work and are in use but haven't been updated and are probably using outdated security. Frankenstein APIs. These are unofficial internal or external APIs that are hacked together to scrape data in various ways from systems that don't provide real APIs. Say you have a beta or test API out there and it's running a different version than the production API, either older or newer. An attacker might be able to take advantage of a vulnerability that exists in an older version of your API or a not fully tested version of your API. All APIs need to be managed and secured to ensure that you protect your data, your customer, your company, and your reputation. At number 3, we have Know Your Users. A critical vulnerability in this category includes broken object level authorization or BOLA vulnerabilities. This is when someone who shouldn't be able to access the resources is able to, even though they are not authorized. We're specifically talking about authorization at the object level here. If you're thinking about authorization for an API in general, you're thinking too broadly. Don't assume that an API user, once authenticated, is only going to be trying to access their own resources or the ones that you told them they should be accessing. No. If I'm logged in as Bob, what happens if I try to read a resource that belongs to Jane? Even worse, what if I try to push updates for that resource? These are simple examples, but can be helpful in exposing more serious issues that might exist in your APIs. All resources need to run authorization checks before providing access. Your API gateway can provide the highly granular level of access control necessary to prevent access control issues. You can also control access to resources and methods via scope level policy definitions. We also have broken user authentication. APIs that are not using secure authentication are at risk of attackers compromising their system using this exploit. How are you handling authentication, and at what level are you handling it? How are you handling tokens for your APIs? Be sure to test the API authentication systems that you are using to secure your APIs. An attacker will take a look at your token handling and try to identify flaws and weaknesses. Similar to broken object authorization, API endpoints that are used for admin purposes need to use secure authorization policies. An attacker may be able to guess an admin endpoint, and an API cannot rely on the client implementing authorization. Secure all functions, especially calls that result in creating, deleting, or modifying user accounts or other resources that might give an attacker more ammunition that they can use to continue further attacks. In an effort to transform and bind data from clients, sometimes a mass assignment vulnerability can creep in. This happens when an API allows data from the client to save properties that the user should not have permission to update. An attacker might try to send additional properties that are valid, but not for them. If, say, they sent in some property that would get mapped to the database and give them rights or access to something that they shouldn't have rights to. A best practice for avoiding this is to only use whitelist and not blacklist with your properties. Use your API Gateway's policy enforcement to specifically define the properties that can be updated. This is one way to protect your APIs and your data from this security threat. At number 4, we have Know Your Tools. There are a lot of products that you're going to be using as part of your API strategy. You need to understand the function for each one in general and also the specifics of a particular brand to know what features that this product may or may not have. There are some key categories here that I want to hit on quickly. The first is Web Application Firewalls, or WAFs. WAFs can be great at detecting suspicious traffic based on known algorithms. This might be based on the frequency of calls or errors, IP address ranges, or a multitude of other identification points. Do appropriate testing to know the limitations of your WAF and know how it integrates with your other security products. Next is the API Gateway and Portal. This is going to be the core to your API security solution. If you are not currently using an API management solution for your APIs, I would highly suggest looking into this first. Software AG Web Methods provides an on-premise and SaaS solution for securely managing your APIs. Next, we have API security products. Now, often organizations already have or are looking into API security products to complement the API security provided by their API gateway. These products are often based on shift left or shield right. Shift left is referring to the shifting your security focus to the beginning of the API lifecycle process and to integrate it into the design and development of an API, which works to help protect it in every other step of the API lifecycle all the way to the retirement of your API. Shield right is talking about the emphasis on continuing to protect your APIs at runtime and beyond. It's important to understand how each of these products fits into the API lifecycle. These tools can provide a defense against unknown attacks by working with your API gateway using a combination of AI, ML, and defined algorithms and policies. Next, we have mobile applications. Now, mobile applications are out of scope for this talk, but still important. Secure your mobile apps and the access to your APIs that these mobile apps are using. I will also mention logging here because most tools will provide some sort of logging, but it's important to know where and how they log as well. Also check logging in your own applications to make sure that you're in that sweet spot of logging enough, but not too much. If something happens and you are under attack, your logs are going to be a valuable resource for you and a potential target for attackers. If you're involved with API security at your organization, you should probably be familiar with these other tools as well. API testing tools, Open API design tools, API pentesting tools, and Open API fuzzing tools. Security misconfiguration is one of the items on the OWASP API Security Top 10 list, and it is probably one of the most common issues leading to security exploits. While human error is tough to protect against, you can use an API gateway like Software AG Web Methods to shift some of that responsibility to shared and global security policy definitions, which can then be applied to large collections of APIs, thus avoiding this security vulnerability. You can have the best security products in the world, but if they're not configured correctly, they're not going to be able to do their job of protecting your APIs and other assets. Last but not least, we have number 5, secure everything. Secure your data, your APIs, your organization, and your future. This is where everything from the previous 4 steps comes together. You need a complete and holistic solution for your API security, and you will often have more than one product you are using together. This makes the number 4 key, know your tools, even more crucial. You need to know the features and limitations of each product and how they work together. Are your security products working inline or out of band? How does your API gateway work with any of the shift left and shield right API security tools that you might be using? Remember, your API gateway is the core to your API security and needs to be powerful and flexible enough to work with all your security solutions. You need to secure everything. Rate limiting is placing restrictions on how many API requests can be made per hour, per day, or month. Without proper limits on access to resources, an attacker can easily overload your API system. Using features like rate limiting, throttling, and other threat protection policies in your API gateway and API security tools, you can block denial of service attempts, limit large payloads, stop SQL injection, monitor traffic, and stop other attacks that can affect your APIs and other resources. Rate limiting can also slow down hackers when they are trying to run attacks that might try to guess codes or passwords using automated techniques. Now, we also have security misconfiguration. Now, I know this was on number 4 key, but I'm mentioning it again because it's so common and so easily corrected. Make sure you know your tools and how to configure them correctly. Injection. API attacks often come in the form of malicious code that a client might try to trick an API into executing. APIs often have to interpret unknown data, and a vulnerability can be exploited if the API blindly executes that code. SQL has been around for over 40 years, but while most security tools provide a pretty good job of catching SQL injection, it's not the only type of injection attack that can happen. It is very important never to trust the API client, even with internal consumers. By defining data types in schemas and validating all requests through threat protection policies defined by your API gateway and API security products, you can prevent SQL and other types of injection attacks. And for a bonus, we have API security strategy and best practices. Document your strategy. You need to document your processes, the tools you use, the people responsible, the tests you run. Document it all. API documentation. Make sure your API documentation is secure. Now, what do I mean by that? Make sure that it's up to date and has the latest examples. Be sure you're not including things that could lead an attacker to a vulnerability. Test. Use the many tools that are available to you to test and scan your APIs to make sure that your API security is covered. Vulnerabilities can often sneak in with code logic that's changed between releases, so don't depend on previously run tests. Automate what you can and integrate those results with scheduled manual tests that you also run. Understand false positives and false negatives. I'm not going to go deep on this, but understand the differences and how to handle these throughout the testing process. And last, keep learning. Things change very fast in the world of API security, and it is to your advantage to keep learning in order to understand these changes. You also want to make sure that the tools and the products you are using are also keeping up with this ever-changing world. So there you have it, the 5 keys to surviving the API apocalypse. The goal of all this is to equip you with the basics, but there's so much more that you will need to learn and understand with API security, so stay vigilant. By following the 5 keys I gave you, you will also be covered for the API vulnerabilities listed in the OWASP Top 10 list for API security. There are some video resources here that you can use to continue your learning journey. Here, you can find a variety of API and API security related resources to help you level up your API security for your organization. If you have any questions that don't get answered today, please reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn by scanning the QR code here or by going to linkedin.com/in/Brenton House. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel to stay up to date with the latest in API security. Thank you, and I will now hop on over to see if we have any questions today.
Thanks, Brenton, for the great insights into API security. And now for those of you who would like to continue exploring today's topic, please visit our website at softwareag.com to find out more about the latest features and web methods that you've heard about today. You can also download our analyst reports, our latest ebook, and get a free trial of web methods right on our website. All of these links can be found in the resources section, which is located on the top right side of the webcast dashboard. So please do check them out. And now it is time to do Q&A. If you have a question for Brenton, please type it into the Q&A box now. And as you see, we have a couple coming in. So go ahead and take the first one. Who is actually responsible for API security at an organization?
So That's a good question. The short answer is everyone. Security is everyone's job at an organization, and most organizations will be very clear with that. Everybody has to be vigilant with security because it impacts everything from design, development, testing, documenting, deploying, and more. However, depending on the size of your organization, though, you might have the role of CSO or Chief Security Officer, who is typically the executive responsible for the security of everything, including IT and APIs.
Great. Thanks, Brenton. Next question. Can you provide a few of the best tools out on the market right now for API static and runtime tools?
Well, there are a lot of API security tools out there, and what I can do is I can compile a list for you to send out after this webinar. So if you leave your name and email in the comments, I will follow up with you on that. I can tell you that Postman is a great tool for testing. Even though it's not specifically a security tool, it can be used as a valuable resource for testing many different scenarios with your APIs. It can also be scripted and automated, which is a great feature.
Great. Thanks, Brenton. Next question. How often is the OWASP Top 10 list updated?
This is actually the first top 10 list that OWASP has done for API security, and it was created in 2019. There have been several updates to the top 10 list for web vulnerabilities, and the API top 10 list is actually in the process of being reviewed for an update right now. So I would highly suggest that you go to OWASP.
Great, fantastic. Well, I think we have time for one more question. And let's see, we have a lot of APIs. Is there any easy way to update all of our APIs for security?
That's another good question. Yes, there's a huge growth of APIs in it. It's not unusual at all for an organization to have a lot of APIs. I mean, some of those are internal, external. Sometimes it's hard to even know how many APIs you have, and that takes a lot for an organization. If they haven't been tracking what APIs they're using, that number can get really high once you actually start looking at all your APIs. Now, Software AG Web Methods API Gateway works really well, obviously as an essential core for API security, but allows you to move the management of your API security up to a global level. It allows you to secure all your APIs by applying policies to groups of APIs instead of having to do it to the individual API. I mean, obviously this saves time, but it also removes the factor of human error that can arise when you're trying to apply the security for each one individually and making sure that they all have it updated. They're using the latest standards for authentication, authorization, and everything else.
Great. Thanks, Brenton. We are now out of time for Q&A. So we'll conclude the session by once again thanking you for your great insights and our audience for attending. On behalf of Software AG, have a great rest of your day.